Shabbat Shalom. This evening, in conjunction with the National Council of Jewish Women and hundreds of partner organizations throughout the U.S., Temple Emanu-El is observing Reproductive Rights Shabbat. On this special night, we affirm that reproductive freedom is a Jewish value and abortion justice is a matter of urgent Jewish moral concern. We are proud, yes, thank you. We are proud to join with so many in centering this issue and honored to speak out on behalf of women and pregnant people across this nation. Here to help us raise our voices is a true hero in the fight for abortion rights. State Senator Liz Krueger was first elected to the New York State Senate in 2002 and is the chair of the Senate Finance Committee. A champion of women's and reproductive rights, she is the co-founder of the New York State bipartisan pro-choice legislative caucus. She was a leader in the fight to pass the Women's Health and Wellness Act, the Breastfeeding Bill of Rights, postpartum depression legislation, and the Reproductive Health Act, which updated New York state law to protect New Yorkers' right to abortion care in the face of federal attacks on abortion rights. Prior to her election to the Senate, Senator Krueger served for 15 years as the Associate Director of the Community Food Resource Center and was the founding director of the Food Bank for New York City. A graduate of Northwestern University and the University of Chicago, Senator Krueger and her husband have lived on the Upper East Side of Manhattan since 1983. Please join me in welcoming Senator Liz Krueger to our bima.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. So great to be back here at Emanu-El. I'm a member of Central, but I love synagogue hopping. And with music like this, I think I have to hop here more often. So I'm here to talk about reproductive health. But when you talk about reproductive health, you're not just talking about women or healthcare. You're talking about a recognition that I believe is fundamental to this country and our Constitution, of human rights, of the ability for people to make decisions on their own behalf without government intervening. When you talk about, thank you, when you talk about reproductive health, you're talking about decisions that are very personal and should be between families and healthcare providers, and frankly, not men or women sitting in legislative bodies anywhere. Thank you. And apparently not men or women sitting in the Supreme Court either, as we have learned recently. But I was trying to put it into context as Jews. And the fact is, the Jewish religion is very clear about this. And there have been many, many articulate statements by different organizations, particularly since the Dodd's decision a year and a half ago, which took away what we thought was a constitutional right, and that, quote, the Women's Rabbinic Network, the sacred texts are clear. They view fetuses as a soul only once born, and therefore forcing someone to carry a pregnancy that they do not want or that endangers their life is a violation of Jewish law because it prioritizes a fetus over the living adult who is pregnant. Must be understood, this is a violation of the U.S. Constitution, which guarantees our freedom to practice our religion and also our freedom from the dictates of other religions. Because yes, there are people who participate in religions that believe abortion is wrong. I've had many debates, and I explain I'm elected to represent this country and this state in civil matters, in civil law. If your religion teaches you that abortion is not okay, I will fight to the death that you never are forced into one. But if you want to make decisions to save your own life, to save the family you already have, to realize that this isn't the right time, that cannot be a decision made by people in the courts or in legislative bodies or the White House or Congress. And it is a violation of our rights for religious freedom as Jews to have someone tell us that it's not okay and we're not allowed to make these decisions for themselves. And I'm getting older, as are many of us here. Actually, there are a lot of younger people here, hooray, because I was just starting college when Roe v. Wade was originally decided, and suddenly there was the legal right to abortion in this country. And interestingly, one of my first jobs was working with the Jewish Community Council of Chicago with new Soviet immigrants. It was the first wave of Soviet immigrants, and there were 400 in Chicago. And somehow, as a college student, I ended up being responsible for everything for 400 people. I was supposed to teach them how to get jobs, how to teach them English, how to teach them to look for apartments, how to get access to health care. And what was particularly fascinating to me was these young Russians knew about abortion because abortion was legal and safe and free in the Soviet Union, but they had no birth control. So the only form of birth control anyone was using was abortion. And the Jewish community in Chicago was a little uncomfortable about this since abortion had just become legal and they were responsible for the health care. So I was told, make them stop getting abortions. I was like, I guess that means teach them birth control. So I went to Planned Parenthood, and I was all of 18 years old, and I looked 12, by the way, and I got my training as a birth control counselor, and you got a little suitcase like a Fisher brush salesman with all the supplies in it, and I'd go out and do presentations about birth control with all these people going, I don't think this is going to work for us. But it was really fascinating. And it started me on a journey of starting to understand the cultural differences, the religious differences, and the crises, the true crises that happened in people's lives. And if they couldn't get access to the health care they needed, if they couldn't get access to the contraceptive care they needed, it was a disaster. It was a frightening disaster. And so I learned early on that this was a crucial issue for women, disproportionately for poor women, as it is disproportionately a crisis for poor women today. And despite the fact that I've worked very hard to make sure New York State has the strongest laws and protections in the country for women and men who need their basic rights protected by our laws, and we do. We have the strongest laws in the country, and we are now technically a sanctuary state where women are fleeing to New York to get their health care because they're living in states, and you've all read the articles, I'm sure. Not only can they not get an abortion, even if they're being told they will die if they don't get an abortion, even women who have miscarriages, they had no intention of aborting, their body decided that this was not a fetus that could survive. Having miscarriages, not being able to be cared for in a hospital, not being allowed to have the deceased fetus through a miscarriage removed from their bodies. You get sepsis if that is not taken care of. And women fleeing their states, women and doctors being told they can face felony charges for providing the health care or getting the health care. It is scary times. We know as Jews, it's scary times right now here at home on all kinds of issues. But my position is we must fight back, and we must make sure that we reverse the decisions that were made at the federal level and at states throughout the country. And because I'm not ever totally sure we're protected enough, the one thing I did want to talk to everybody about tonight was asking for your help. In November, it's going to be the most important election in many of our lives for all kinds of reasons, but I don't want to talk about the partisan politics. In November in New York State, when you go to vote, When you turn over the ballot, and please do, you're going to have a referendum question about whether we should change the New York State Constitution. And that question will be, are you supporting or not supporting the Inclusive Equal Rights Amendment, which is an amendment I wrote, and it took me 5 years to get through the legislative process before we had the decision about Dodd's and the loss of the protection at the federal level. But I knew we needed to do this. We needed to modernize our Constitution. And so it sounds very complicated because the constitutional language is, and I'm not a lawyer, I pretend I am, but then I talk to real lawyers. So it would expand the categories of who's protected by our Constitution. And the amendment would include ethnicity, national origin, age, disability, sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, reproductive health care, and autonomy. This is a critical moment in history, not just to guarantee that we establish our reproductive rights in our Constitution, but that also that we establish that the LGBTQ communities have their constitutional rights protected. You know, the last time we changed the Constitution on this language was 1938. We didn't even have half the definitions of who we all are back in 1938, so our Constitution needs to be modernized. There will be a big pushback against this ballot initiative. You won't have heard anything yet, but I know for a fact that there are groups that are raising large sums of money because they believe this will be one more step towards reversing the decision that the U.S. Supreme Court made in Dodd. That'll be one more decision establishing that in New York State, we don't let anybody be left out. We want equal rights for everyone in our state. And as I explained, even in a debate with someone who was Jewish, much more conservative than me, who was, this is not so good, not giving everybody these categories. We're giving them the same rights as people who are of a specific religion. I said, yes, that doesn't take away our rights when we expand everyone's rights. And in fact, I would argue as Jews, we should understand that better than almost anyone else. Because what is the story of Nazi Germany? First, they decided there were two sets of laws, everybody else and the Jews. And we didn't have the same rights as everyone else. And then we know what followed. So I believe that as a Jewish community, as Jewish individuals, as a Jewish elected official, I have more responsibility to understand how crucial it is that our government treat everyone the same under our laws. No, we don't like them as much. No, we don't understand them as much. It doesn't matter. Our job as Americans and our Constitution, and my job as an elected official, is to make sure that everyone in our state has equal rights under our law, not to be discriminated against, to be able to make their own decisions, to live in peace in our great state. And when it comes to reproductive health, I don't know that there are any examples I can possibly give you that you haven't already been reading about for the last several years. So I want to thank Temple Emanu-El for inviting me to be here tonight to talk about this. I want to urge everyone to keep your eye open because the fight over this ballot initiative will start probably in September. People don't get involved in those issues until a few months out from elections. You just turn over your ballot when you go to vote, and I would urge you to vote yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Krueger, for all you do for your constituents and for the people of New York State every single day. Tonight, we most especially appreciate your determination and tenacity in the ongoing fight for reproductive health and freedom. Your unwavering advocacy for women and women's access to health care make our beloved state a more equitable, just, and compassionate place to live, work, and dream. May you, yes. Senator Krueger, may you continue to go from strength to strength.